Lunch and Learn is an MFG radio network production brought to you by GIE Media's Manufacturing Group. We highlight some of the latest innovations in manufacturing and design to help you gain insights to the newest products and technologies in the medical, aerospace, defense, and electric vehicle manufacturing industries to keep you ahead of the competition. And hello once again. I am Jake Kaufman, the senior editor for the manufacturing group here at GIE Media for our manufacturing group. We are happy to be joined today for our manufacturing lunch and learn with KINEXON. KINEXON empowers manufacturing companies to connect and automate their operations on shop floors and in warehouses using cutting-edge industrial IoT technology. Today's presenter is Ben Hammond, sales executive for aerospace and defense for KINEXON. He will discuss how leading aerospace companies like Airbus and MTU Aero Engines have moved from the lost materials to on-time delivery and operational excellence. But without any further ado, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is all yours.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to showcase what I would consider to be a relatively new and innovative technology in manufacturing. As Jake had mentioned, right, I am a senior sales executive here at KINEXON, working primarily with aerospace and defense accounts. Somewhat of an Industry 4.0 consultant and manufacturing consultant as well. And what we do here at KINEXON really is a transformative technology for an entire enterprise, but at its core is a very powerful shop floor tool, right? So when we talk about Industry 4.0 in aerospace, the conversation jumps straight into AI, automation, digital twins, all of the buzzwords, right? But the reality is most of the pain in manufacturing isn't actually solved by futuristic technology. It's actually solved by getting the basics right. They have their value, but without a solid foundation, it's hard to take advantage of new technologies like those buzzwords. And every operations team that I speak to, whether it is at any of the accounts that we've mentioned or the blind case study that we are referencing here in this presentation, is where's my work in process? Where did that tooling go? Did the part follow the right process? And did somebody miss a scan or an entry into the digital system at the workstation, right? And these are really simple questions, but the consequences of not having answers to those can be enormous. It's not just time lost, but you have compliance risks, penalties, late deliveries, and unhappy customers in the complex supply chain that aerospace and defense represents. In Industry 4.0 to me really does start when you no longer have to ask those questions because the system tells you automatically. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So when you boil everything down, A&D manufacturers, from my opinion, right, struggle with three main bucket of issues on the shop floor, right? It's the operational bottlenecks, the things that cause line stoppages, missing materials and rework disruption schedules, and how that just affects everything downstream. Each disruption ties up working capital and often creates a higher propensity for those types of contract penalty risks, or rather unhappy customers, right? The second one would be inefficient processes. A lot of progress depends on tribal knowledge on the shop floor. If the right person just didn't clock into work that day for whatever reason, material's going to sit, lead times are going to inflate, and then work in process is going to grow faster than your throughput is. The third one would be poor asset management, right? In aerospace, every part is usually serialized, every tool is critical, and every movement of those assets matters. So misplacing a tool isn't just something that's inconvenient. It's literally a compliance issue in most customers. So one of the things that is interesting is that McKinsey actually quantified the upside of RTLS. And what that really is real-time location systems, right? Using IoT and real-time data from the software and the IoT devices that we're talking about with this case study, you can drive up to 25% more productivity in general. That's not theoretical. That's just what many OEMs, specifically my customers as well, are seeing now. And so with real-time location systems, right, the whole goal is establishing an IoT device network that provides real-time data points on your shop floor of where every single asset is. And one of the first use cases that customers see value from that it might not be comprehensive enough to generate the ROI it might is just search and find, right? You wake up every morning, you clock into your job, you open up an RTLS dashboard, and you know where every single piece of whip, tooling, and all of those components are. And that can be very powerful as a starting point, and it just gets better from there. So when we unpack the, asset tracking challenges, right, through our TLS, let's bring this to the real world, right? Because one of the largest aerospace and defense OEMs in the United States is a household name that everyone probably knows. They sat down with us and they literally said that they just can't find materials. They have downtimes because things disappear. And that's a huge risk for things like expired materials when you talk about prepreg and composites hitting the production floor. It's not really a niche edge case. It's quite literally a day-to-day operations issue across multiple of their facilities. They asked us, from a general perspective, is where is the material? Did it follow the correct routing that it was supposed to? What's waiting? What's blocked? And what is the next product or work in process that I need to move next and prioritize? The interesting part is that none of those challenges were really related to a lack of scanning, a lack of people, or a lack of an ERP system. The gap was literally just real-time visibility. And that's what we do here at KINEXON. That's the problem that we solve with our real-time location systems platform and subsequent offering for the IoT technologies. Um, so what surprised the customer in this case study was how small and simple issues can scale into such a large downstream supply chain impact. One missing tool would shut down a production line for extended periods of time. One piece of whip left in the wrong area would cause a production supervisor to make the wrong call on what to do next. One scan could create a suspect part event, right? Did it go through the right process? And then one expired pre-preg material roll would have a, large value of scrap created after it was, already used. And that's a massive problem, right? So nothing was really broken in their process. Nothing was really wrong with their digital systems, their MES, their ERP. It's just they were missing the ability to see the flow of the materials as it was happening across different plants and through different technologies. When we piloted KINEXON OS, this was what their leadership realized. They need a standardized real-time view for every single one of their manufacturing facilities. So the customer didn't just want another tool, another dashboard, right? They wanted a standard. They wanted something that they could tried and true roll out across multiple facilities with the same formats, right? Reduce the cost to ownership, reduce fragmented systems. They really wanted a single harmonized approach across all their plants, regardless of whether their sites used these location technologies like RFID, BLE, or UWB. And why? Really because when every plant operates differently, you can't scale those improvements. You just can't roll out the best practices. And you just can't benchmark the improvements to the throughput the way that McKinsey had, justified 25% productivity. Their vision was to standardize every location sensor, right? A selection based off of the use cases, whether it's a standard selection of RFID, a standard selection of BLE, or a standard selection of UWB. Standardize the data model so that all of the location data points that were being created by these technologies were being reported up through the enterprise in the same expectable format so that the contexting of those data points was always the same. And they wanted to standardize the processes in specific business units tied to all materials movements. The result of choosing KINEXON OS for this was that they received an enterprise grade single source of truth for all of their work in process, all of their tooling, and all inventory across their enterprise. Um, it's really powerful when you have something at the enterprise level that can be standardized that creates massive value on the shop floor. So our platform doesn't force you into one technology. Whether you have Bluetooth Low Energy in one plant or RFID at a receiving gate, UWB in an assembly area, we unify all of it through KINEXON OS. Every location becomes a real-time event stream. Every material movement becomes a digital signal, and every manual verification becomes automated. This allowed them to roll it out at 7 plants. There are double that amount actually coming in the pipeline next. We have 7 implemented successfully, and we have double that in the future. That is already under contract. We are standardizing their workflows now. We're automating traceability for all of those components that I had mentioned earlier, and we're really helping connect the shop floor to the top floor, making sure that the ERP and the MES have real-time, accurate, up-to-date information on the basis of the production's vital signs, similar to a heartbeat, right? And most importantly for them, they didn't need to replace any of the hardware. I think one of the things, if anybody has experience, RTLS as an initiative, right, as an enterprise manufacturing improvement tool is relatively new, but RFID is not. It's been in retail, it's been in healthcare, it's been in manufacturing for a very long time. I think one of the things that if you are familiar with that is you recognize how much infrastructure is related to installing some of those IoT devices. And that really is one of the few key primary value drivers of KINEXON OS is that we do not care what technology you have. As long as it creates location data, we're happy to integrate with it. So there's no re-infrastructuring costs necessary to make it valuable in a much higher level with some of the capabilities of KINEXON OS. So what are the top 4 benefits, right? I've talked about standardization of rollout plans across an enterprise, standardized data architectures, but I really do want to go back to how this is such a powerful shop floor tool, right? The key benefits for a shop floor environment that you get out of RTLS is a reduction of non-value added tasks. One of the key value driver metrics that we champion and we see through these implementations is a 95% reduction in search time, confirming, checking, moving, all of the daily friction that slows the throughput from whether it's considered a milk runner in your company or a production controller or a production supervisor. It's no more guessing on where those products are. You know where the work in process is at any given time, and it's the lead time to identifying it is simply the walking time from where you are to where it actually is because it's represented in real time on our search and find capabilities. The second one is a massive reduction in manual interactions. I talked about making sure that the cleanliness of the data architecture that flows into the ERP and the MES, but really that comes down to 60 to 90% fewer touches required by shop floor operators. Once operators stopped chasing information and started building their products instead of focusing on data entry, we received higher quality data inputs to the MES and the ERP automatically, but also more hands-on time with the actual production itself, and subsequently resulting in the next one, which is a shorter assembly and production time, right? A shorter days to manufacture. Up to 20 to 35% reduction in time from order start to order finish, right? In aerospace, one of the common terms is from cradle to grave. 35% reduction in time to produce products based on the removal of some of the prior 2 metrics that I had just referenced, right? And overall, another benefit of this technology is an improved compliance and reduced scrap risk. Automatic alerts on things like aging work in process, route violations through a QC loop, right? Expired materials not getting used and instead being identified ahead of time or expedited so that they can be used prior to expiration. And overall, with tooling, identifying missing tooling and also therefore, not using out of calibration tooling in your production process. So in general, when your data is real time, everything speeds up because people aren't they're not fighting the blind spots anymore on the production floor. It's less firefighting and more focus on actual production. So as I had mentioned earlier, but I do just really want to hit this part home is this is really where the magic happens is in the platform. It's the RTLS platform that your enterprise chooses, whether that's a shop floor decision or an enterprise decision, right? It's if your facility uses any type of RFID for gates, calibrated tooling, or other systems, right? If you use BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, for high level asset tracking, 3 to 5 meters, or if you're using ultra wideband for very high precision sub meter accuracy, right? Which workbench is it on? Which workstation is it at? They all become the same language inside of KINEXON OS. And that really does give you full plant wide visibility, enterprise level visibility, automatic alerts for things like aging work in process, automatic process confirmations, and automatic routing verification. So you really do get to decide when and where your accuracy matters and where it doesn't. And you don't pay for just ultra wideband everywhere, right? But you get precision where it creates value based on the technology of choice. So the customer shared several lessons that I think apply to almost every single A&D manufacturer, right? It's first, don't wait for it to be perfect. Just start with the lowest hanging fruit, right? Start with the highest pain areas. Second, build a standard that every plant can understand and follow. Third, choose a platform that can connect all technologies into a single roof so that your processes, not your hardware, are the thing that define the use cases. And finally, measure outcomes early so that within the first few weeks, you can see those search times drop. You can see the work in process aging, risks shrink, and the rework necessities decreasing. Industry 4.0 really isn't about complexity, it's about visibility. And if you fix that visibility, everything else gets better. So, as I mentioned, if we just look at the broader picture again, overall, you could cut your search times by up to 95% for any product you have issues tracking. You could minimize manual scanning tasks for the productive work in processes or check in, check out of calibrated tooling or other critical consumables by 60 to 90%. And you could reduce your overall production throughput time by 20 to 35%. And the real value, through those metrics is apparent, but I think it's something simpler than that, right? It's when people know where everything is and they know what needs to happen next, they stop firefighting, right? They start producing, and that's what real-time locations do. It really just removes the guesswork. It removes the chasing. It removes the reliance on tribal knowledge, and it just lets your production teams focus on what they're great at, which is building aircraft components, building aircraft assembly frames, and just delivering on schedule for the supply chain. So that's the journey with one of our key accounts. We have many more of these types of topics, right? From operations bottlenecks to standardizing that amount of plants, right? If you're really thinking about where to start, just start small, right? It's what's one area where visibility and production or supply chain is missing. What processes rely too much on tribal knowledge, or what pieces of whip, tooling, or material cause the most headaches for the shop floor. That's really the perfect starting point for this type of technology. So with that in mind, I know we've got about 10 minutes left on the docket. Thank you all for spending the time to listen to me talk about RTLS today. I'm happy to connect afterwards, share more examples, or walk through how this might look in your actual shop floor.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ben. I know a question that I would have is you talked about starting small with some aspect, and then you could scale to have this throughout your entire manufacturing operation. What would kind of be your, I guess, sweet spot of how long you should keep that initial thing going before deciding to expand?
Pilots should be very short, right? And
Hmm.
depending on whether it's a proof of concept or a proof of value, I think that it should be very short. It does matter which of the three buckets, whether it's just, an initial rollout to get feasibility of how the solution works versus to actually do something more consultative through a proof of value. In my opinion,
Mm.
nothing longer than 3 months for an
Okay.
implementation of these technologies. Yeah, and then for us here at KINEXON, we do believe that it is a utility in the shop floor or in the
Hmm.
enterprise. So obviously the horizons of how it scales and how it implements is over a decade in terms of how long it lasts as a tool for you.
Awesome. And then also, I assume too, this is something since supply chains are always kind of you know, a, a headache for people in the aerospace and defense industries to know when, your materials and stuff like that are running low and being able to, that's something that Kinexon would be a perfect thing to help with, right?
Absolutely. Like one of the let's just say like the most complex thesis statements for how real-time location systems could be applied as a holistic supply chain optimization tool. You have GPS tracking trucks as they
Mm.
move between either suppliers or inside of the internal supply chain network that provide notifications automatically on arrival times. You have storehouses and warehouses with millions in some cases that I've seen actually of components being tracked by RFID. You have work in process being tracked by ultra wideband, and you have storage locations that are outdoors being tracked by Bluetooth Low Energy. The way that I think about it is like a production zipper, right?
Mhm.
You want those teeth to align at the perfect time so that you get a tight fit and then
Mhm.
you're not facing risks of that. And so, for something like a work in process, to be a draw against materials that might be in the storeroom. Something like a Kanban system as a current methodology in Industry 4.0, or not in Industry 4.0, just manufacturing engineering in general, is so much more possible when you know how many products are being utilized on the basis of how many products have moved through the production steps. And that to me is that's the master thesis of how
Mhm.
RTLS that's possible in Connexon OS is achieved when you actually have visibility on where, what, and when all products are utilized and how.
Awesome. And then, this is something obviously we talked about in the intro, how you guys have worked with Airbus, but is this something too that you could also scale down to a smaller machine shop and they would really see the benefit of what Kinexon can do?
Yeah, absolutely right. And I as far as I'm concerned, right, hardware is at on an as need basis, right? I offer ultra wideband technologies through Kinexon, but we are a diverse ecosystem of partnerships that also can align the correct technology for the correct use case. But I am going to talk about ultra wideband in that case for just a second here, because
Hmm.
there is a technology like SKU that Kinexon offers called Kinexon Mesh. And a lot of those small shop floor production systems, they don't necessarily face the same type of, let's just say, value drivers that are made opportunistic by automated bookings to an ERP system in the cloud, right? Maybe the IT networks aren't that diverse yet in those shop floors. But one thing that is valuable for everybody is search and find. And our Kinexon mesh technology from an ultra wideband perspective is a very low infrastructure. It is a fully hosted solution on the Kinexon side, so there's no issue with IT systems and segmentation, right? And its entire purpose is to create a meter of accuracy tracking on all products on the shop floor and a general overview for things like process models, heat maps, and just generally representing what your shop floor is on a very it's just a bird's eye view. It's very powerful for some of those smaller shops that maybe don't have the let's just say current appetite for those futuristic industry 4.0 use cases.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that wraps up most of the questions that I have. If there's anyone else in the audience that would like to ask, do still have a few more minutes with Ben. But if not, I do want to take this time to say thank you to Kinexon, and obviously that is a massive thank you then to Ben Hammond, the sales executive for the aerospace and defense sector for Kinexon. And like I said, if anyone does have questions, we'll be able to get them to Ben and the Kinexon team. But if nothing else is coming in, I want to say thank you so much, Ben, for your time and your expertise today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake.
All right, we'll see you. You can listen to all of our episodes of Manufacturing Matters and Lunch and Learn podcast from the MFG Radio Network on Spotify, Apple Music, and on our websites, today'smedicaldevelopments.com, aerospacemanufacturinganddesign.com, defenseandmunitions.com, and evdesignandmanufacturing.com.